Welcome to episode 6 of the QCA Wrestle podcast with Rob Hill and Jay Zyman. Our guest today is Nick Trizzino. We really enjoyed the conversation, and you will too. We're here with Nick Trizzino. Nick's the head coach of Agoge Wrestling Club at Summit Training Center in Bettendorf. He's a Bettendorf High School product, state champion, three-time state place winner there, four-year letter winner at the University of Iowa. Super impressive family wrestling tradition. His dad, Mark, and his uncle, Scott, were both All-Americans at Iowa under Dan Gable. And his brother, Joey, was also a letter winner at Iowa. So, Nick, it's safe to say that wrestling's in your blood, I would say.
Yeah, a little bit, I guess.
Could you start out by just kind of letting us know how you started out in wrestling, a little bit about your story?
Yeah, so, I started off when I was young, pretty young, but I didn't get real involved. So I remember when I was real young going around with my dad to practices. So he was early on with the Bettendorf Wrestling Club. I actually have a picture with Joey and I real young, and all the way through high school, there might have been like 20 kids in the club or just right around there from K through 12th grade. So we started young. I do remember some of my first memories are my dad would always go over to Augie and wrestle with the college guys over there. And I remember going with him a lot, but never really wanting to do anything. I'd put my wrestling shoes on, sit along the wall, watch him wrestle. And then as soon as everyone else cleared out, that's when I wanted to wrestle. So kind of that way too from the beginning, even going to practices. I wasn't real gung-ho about it when I was young. And I started young. I was probably kindergarten, preschool-ish, where started going around to the room and probably a little intimidated because, you know, when we had our club, it was little kids through high school. So there was a lot of older kids in there as well. So it wasn't just a bunch of little kids your age going in there. So kind of the same thing. I remember really not wanting to do the practices as much. And then as soon as practice was over, it was like, all right, go time, let's wrestle, you know. But so that's kind of how I got started in it, I guess. You know, I think wrestling's one of those sports, though, you kind of have to be introduced to it. Not many kids come home with saying all my buddies are going out for wrestling. I want to go out for wrestling, like football, where you put a group of kids together on a team, or baseball or something like that, where all the kids from the school are on the team. Where I think wrestling's a unique sport in the sense that you kind of almost have to have someone that introduces you to it and then go from there.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too. Did you, when you were little, did you do freestyle and Greco?
No, I remember, I think my first freestyle tournament was maybe 6th grade, I think was the first time I wrestled freestyle. And then 7th grade, I was on the schoolboy dual team. But even then, I might have done 1 or 2 tournaments in 6th grade. I didn't wrestle a lot when I was younger. I think my parents always joked like all these kids had 100 matches. I think I might have had 100 matches under my belt by the time I was like in 8th grade combined. So didn't wrestle a whole lot. So what's that, Jay?
Come out of the gates just a hammer, or did you have a humble beginning and then learn to be a great wrestler?
I would say it was a humble beginning, but I think I wrestled kindergarten. I wrestled 1 tournament. 1st grade, I wrestled at 1 tournament. Both were with Bettendorf Bi-State. I won both of them. So
that's a good tournament.
Yeah, but I don't really know when you're back then in kindergarten. It wasn't the 8-man bracket it is now. It's 4-man brackets. 2nd grade, I might have wrestled 2 or 3 tournaments. 3rd grade, I think I wrestled 2 or 3 tournaments, and then my dad asked if I wanted to wrestle in districts, and I said sure, and then I went 0-2 at districts. So that kind of
You gave it a try? Yeah.
Yeah, I gave it a try. Not real great, but
a lot of kids can relate to that, though, you know, and
yeah.
And then the rest of your story, you can see how you built on that over the
next. Just kind of progressively. I feel like, you know, throughout my career, it was this, you know, especially when I was little. By little, I mean like kindergarten through 8th grade. It just progressively got a little more into it, and this, I think part of me feels like I probably could have taken a little more, but I think it's for a little good to keep them wanting more and just not pushing that threshold, but just keep them wanting more, because it's a tough sport.
I love that mentality, and it's a good lesson not only for the kids, you know, that you may not be the greatest right off the bat, but also the parents, you know, saying you don't want to overdo your kid at a young age. I think Danny had mentioned that the other day as well, about how much you want to subject them or, be involved with wrestling at that young of an age.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think even seeing my brother and I, we were completely different. I think you got to know the kid too. Some kids can take 100 matches and still won't. Some kids one tournament, and hey, that was fun. I had my fill for the year. And then neither's right or wrong at a young age. It's about and keep them getting better for when they're older.
Nice. So we talked about you starting off your wrestling career. Who are some of the guys that you looked up to? Who are some of your role models and influenced your style of wrestling?
I guess role models. I remember as a real young age, we'd always go to the Iowa meet. So I mean, I grew up watching the Hawkeyes, the Gable era and all that stuff. The late, I was born in '89, so I remember the late '90s, early 2000s when Zaleski was there. That was probably a big influence for me, just because that's what I watched. As far as I do remember some high school guys a little bit. Like as I started getting older, we watched some high school guys. Like the Bettendorf High School wrestling. We went to a lot of those meets and stuff, but a lot of it was kids that were in the club that were having success. Were kind of, a couple years older than me that were probably role models or kind of set the standard a little bit in that sense.
Sure.
But yeah, I think as far as if you're talking like looking up to guys, I think it was, it's way different now than or back, even I hate saying back then because I'm not that old, but then it is now because the social media presence, the availability to watch all these guys wrestle and all this stuff. I knew the Iowa guys. I knew a couple of the top guys in the country, but nowadays, everyone from everywhere, and it's just different.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot more available these days. No doubt about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So who is the toughest coach that you ever wrestled for?
So toughest coach that I wrestled for. I would have to say I think it's probably Pablo Bassa. And, I think in my mind, just because it was probably the point in my career and just like everything, all the circumstances together probably made it seem like that was the toughest. Some people probably think that Iowa was the toughest, but I think and I'm not saying it wasn't tough and they weren't tough on us, but I think from the standpoint of where I was at in my career when I started working out with Pablo, I remember through high school, McDonough and I would do one-on-ones with Pablo, the two of us and Pablo, and those are probably some of the toughest workouts I remember. Now, there are some other tough ones, but I'm talking as a consistency. And back then when it was no nonsense. And it was if he told you to do something and you didn't do it, you were there till you did it. And, it's kind of that mentality where we knew if he said don't drop it and you dropped it, we were going to be there until we did it the right way. And so it was just that kind of standard that he set. Yeah.
Wow. So when you think of opponents that you wrestled throughout your career, who's one or two of them that stick out in your head and you're like, wow, this guy took me to the limit? Or, it can even, we've heard coaches before talk about, it's been a match that I lost, but boy, I gave it all out there and wrestled to the last whistle, and it was a great match. So who would be a couple people that stick out in your mind for that?
I'm trying to think of opponents that I wrestled. I remember, some of the stuff that I remember the most was maybe not an opponent I wrestled or a match, but I remember my junior year in high school, I wrestled Tyler Clark every day, and that was kind of one of those ones where it was like, I probably took enough losses in that high school room to make up for a career. So I remember that, as far as matches, I think it was more, sometimes it wasn't about who I wrestled, it was about the style. Sometimes some style, but I remember, like some guys in high school that we kind of had some, through little kids in high school. I remember like Nate Moore, he was super tough when we were in high school. He was the number one recruit in the country. And he was, one of the guys that was always right at my weight or around my weight that, Mark Ballwig was right there too. He was one of those guys that same weight class, McDonough. So those guys, as far as high school, college, I remember I wrestled Montel Marion a couple times, and I remember he had one close match with him, one not so close match with him. And I remember he was good.
Pretty quick, huh?
He had skinny legs, but man, those legs were heavy.
If you could go back in time and give yourself some advice from when you were either a high school or a youth wrestler, a younger wrestler, what advice would you give?
That's a good question, because there's a lot of things you could give advice for. But if I had to pick one thing, I think where this is personally where I think I could have benefited is I think I could have had a little more confidence when I was younger. And I think maybe some of that confidence came from I didn't wrestle a lot when I was younger, but I think I built that through as I got older and through my when I talk little kids career, I'm talking like when I started to 8th grade, and then it goes to high school and college, and that's kind of how I break it up. But my little kids career, I think I lacked some confidence. I think it's all of a sudden you started seeing names, and then it was like you got more concerned about the name than actually just wrestling. And I think I probably didn't give myself enough credit at the beginning. And then my 8th grade year, I won AU state. And then, I placed my freshman year in high school. And then but I think I was a lot better than what I did. I think I kind of reset that confidence level where all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'm a freshman. You know what I mean? Where it kind of took me a while till I got that confidence back. Or maybe not, maybe confidence, maybe a little bit of belief, maybe just a little bit of all that, but there's probably a little bit of that in there.
Yeah. So you've had an incredible career from youth to high school into your collegiate career. Who do you give a credit some of your success to, and how hard was that transition from being just an elite wrestler transitioning into the coaching role, and maybe having lesser wrestlers being able to coach them up to where you want to be or where you want them to be?
Okay, so that's so we'll start off with some people that were influential. Obviously, my dad, he started me in it. I think he did a really good job when I was young. Pushed me when I needed to be, and didn't push me when I didn't. And then once we got to high school, he helped out in the high school room for 2 years till my sophomore year. And then after my sophomore year, that's when Coach Knight came with his coaching staff. And that was Coach Knight, Colin Wicken helped, Adam Grell, Jason Eveman. There's a handful of other guys there. But up until high school, I'd say and my dad were probably the 2 biggest influences. Then high school, I think what really changed, and this kind of goes back to what we talked about just a little while ago, is the confidence deal. I think it's different when my dad was telling me I was really good, because he's my dad and I felt like he had to say that. Otherwise, I'd be pissed at him if he didn't say I was really good, but I didn't believe him when he said I was really good. But up until my junior year, he was the only one, as far as the coaching staff really truly said, hey, you can be a state champ. And all of a sudden, my junior year, Coach Knight comes, Adam Grell, Colin Wicken, and all of a sudden I've got, I remember a practice where Knight and Adam Grell both said, hey, you're going to be a state champ this year. And that was the first time that I had heard that from someone other than my dad. And it's like, holy cow, these guys have been with me for 3 months and they have this much faith in me. Maybe I, what I mean? All of a sudden it starts having me ask that question, well, maybe I am that good. Maybe can I be that good? And that was, I bet, I don't think I got that much better technically or fit or anything like that. All things, and that's the biggest thing now when you want to talk about how I coach kids is if I could click them mentally and get them switched mentally, I'd be the best coach in the world. Because I think that's the biggest issue with when you're talking little kids, because you're talking inconsistencies, confidence. I mean, adults are inconsistent. What do you think a 10 and 11, 12-year-old kid's going to be like? But I also think, too, I have a perspective because I started off not that great. I started off not wrestling a lot. So I think I have a perspective that some of the parents don't have, where I'm like, the kid comes off the mat, the parents are frustrated. I'm like, hey, it's all right. It's not a bit like, I don't get all, I guess I'm a little more, I always tell the parents, you guys are way more, don't get me wrong, I want your kids to win just as bad, and I'm emotionally invested and my time invested and everything, but I also don't get worked up in the short term. I'm here for the long run. So I think that, in the sense of like each kid's, when going back to your question of how I roll that into coaching, I think each kid's different. You got to approach each kid. You can generalize the group, but when you're individually, you got to tweak it to individualize it, because some kids respond differently than others. But I also think just my perspective and the coaching staff that we have over at Agoge, that it's just we're just as competitive as anyone, but at the end of the day, it's not about winning little AU state titles.
Yeah, you're building for something bigger, for sure. Yeah. So that's a good lead-in, actually. So Agoge Wrestling Club, a lot of success. Really, I know the past couple of years you've had a ton of success too, but this year you're really starting to stand out, I'd say, across the entire state of Iowa. AAU state, massive success through, with the Agoge kids. Mm-hmm. You're doing a great job there. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of what you've got going on down there?
Yeah, so we've got a club down in downtown Bettendorf. Craig Wagner, who owns the company that I work for, owns the building, and he's a big supporter of the club. He owns the club. And Brody Grothus and I are running out of there, and we have a beginners group, our little kids group, which is our primary group, the 3rd through 8th grade. Then we got a high school group that should have been started up by now. Unfortunately, for the citizens around the globe, we're kind of on a standstill. But yeah, so it's really blown up in these last, I'd say, actually, you know what? It's grown every year. There's incremental growth, but this past, probably from last year to this year, it's just been crazy. So in a good way, crazy. So it's awesome.
Yeah, I know when we started coming down there, I can't remember what month it was, but I was almost shocked. It's a good problem to have. You guys pack the room now. I mean, it's an awesome, tough kids.
It's a problem. We're working on a solution for the problem, but yeah, we need it's a good problem to have. It's better than the opposite problem where you're not filling it up enough. So
yeah.
Good. Yeah, we got a good group of kids, good coaches, good parents behind it, and everyone's bought in. So, and that kind of leads into the whole, the philosophy of the program is nowhere in the philosophy is there anything about winning AU state titles, because in the grand spectrum, that does not mean a whole lot. I mean, I always tell the parents, I go, at the end of the day, I won AU state title in 8th grade, and I beat McDonough and Andrew Long in it. And guess what? Both those guys are multiple-time high school state champs and All-Americans. I don't think they really care too much about that 8th grade AU bracket. You know what I mean? So our philosophy is just, we have Illinois and Iowa kids, and we want to keep keep state medals on the western side of Illinois and the eastern side of Iowa, and that's our goal. Preferably the state championship medals, but state medals too.
Yeah, that's a great goal.
I mean, that's everything we do. I mean, that, once, and I tell the parents too, when they get older, it becomes as you get older and you go from little kids to high school to college, each level you're at is you're training for the next level, until you're at a level where you're not going to go beyond, then it's about that level. And as you get advanced, high school, it's about getting ready for college. If that's your goal, getting ready for college. So, your goal is, if you're in high school and you want to wrestle in college, yeah, you can have goals to place at state, win state. But at the end of the day, if you're preparing for college, those things are going to kind of fall in place as they are.
Sure.
And that's, and so in high school, you can say the expectations change a little bit, but as far as our little kids go, there's 3 things I care about. I tell them, are we having fun? Because if you're not having fun in wrestling, it's really tough. I always tell people, I go, if you play baseball and your team loses and you guys go get ice cream, guess what? You're all losers. But you can go get ice cream after a wrestling meet, and you might be the only loser. And that's not, that's a tougher pill to swallow than you and your buddies are all losers together. So, having fun's a big thing. You got to keep it fun. It's just like anything. Like if you don't have fun with something, you're not gonna get better at it. I don't care what it is, how old you are. If you're having fun, like that's why people have hobbies and they get good at hobbies because they enjoy it. Have fun, train to win, and compete to win. Not about winning, but you got to put yourself in a position where you can win. And training to win and competing to win it's kind of a broad spectrum that covers everything from being coachable, doing what you're taught, working hard, and having discipline. Because if you're, people can give a lot of effort and they can try really hard. And yeah, you can go out and wrestle a match and try really hard and throw 5 headlocks and get taken to your back every time in tech fall. It's like, hey, you tried really hard, but you weren't doing the right things to put yourself in a position to have success. So that's kind of what the big thing that we preach is, do what you're coached, and put yourself in a position. It's not about winning, but it's about competing to win and training to win.
Sure. Hey, if you don't mind, I'd like to reminisce just a little bit about Agoge. So when my oldest is a sophomore now, when he was a little kid, I can't remember what grade he was in. It was probably 4th or 5th grade. He started having a little more success. And we were like, what are we going to do? We got to get him, a little more practice time than just the Bettendorf Wrestling Club. Bettendorf Wrestling Club's amazing, but it's 2 days a week. I mean, a lot of the kids are wrestling more. So about that time, I heard about Agoge. So I would bring Bradley down there. And it was like to me, as a big wrestling nerd, it was like a star-studded room. Like I would go down there and I'd see Freddie Stroker, Jacob Schwarm, Jack Wagner. I mean, Dayton Racer. I can't tell you, but I can't even put the math together on how many state titles we would see in that room at one time. It was incredible. Go
ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, what helped draw those kids? You just had so many tough kids coming down there to work out. What was like the big draw to get them all down there? How'd that happen, I guess?
You know what? Well, is that we're there. It always starts with a group of kids. You need a good group of kids as your core kids. And then everyone we had, because like you said, Paul Glenn, Jacob Schwarm, Jack Wagner, Freddie Stroker, Dayton Racer, Jacob Woodard, Wrestling. We had, and Jackson Gallagher. I could go on. And then all of a sudden you get those core group of kids. And then now we start bringing kids from across the river, kids from Iowa City, Cedar Rapids. We had kids coming all over the place to train with us because we had really good wrestling partners. So everyone wanted to come train with us. And it kind of, there were kids that would come once in a while. There were kids that were consistent. There's Carver James from Dakota was pretty consistent. He was a national qualifier for University of Illinois. Josh Albert would come down once in a while, because they got buddies. So all of a sudden they come. Max Thompson came down a handful of times because they'd come down, stay with the guys for a weekend or a week, and we trained. So it was a good time. It was fun when, hopefully we get back to that point. That's the
Absolutely.
goal.
I think you're getting there. I really do. You look at that 5th and 6th grade type age group right now. Those kids have got something special going, and I think it's coming. I do think it's coming.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's fun to be a part of for sure. So.
All right, Nick, we've entered the part where it's rapid fire questions. We call this the OT, sudden death questions. You ready?
All right, go for it. You got it.
All right, man. Favorite football team?
Dallas Cowboys.
American.
I told you I grew up in the 90s. They were pretty good back then. I stuck with them, though. We're coming around. You wait.
Yeah. What is the longest live go you ever wrestled with somebody? Who was it? Where was it? That sort of thing.
Okay, so there's one that sticks out in mind, and I don't know if this was my longest one, but at the time, so I was in high school, and we did I don't know if it was like a 30 or 40-minute go straight, and it was with Tyler Clark. Probably the one practice I got the better of them all that whole year. One practice, and that was that go. Yeah. I'm sure there was ones that were similar to that, but sometimes once you get older, it doesn't, and maybe they didn't seem that as long as that one, but that was one that sticks out in my mind. That it was.
How did Tyler react when you got the better of him that day?
I think it came back on me the next day. Kind of one of those things. Tomorrow's, today's today and tomorrow's a new one, and yeah, it was definitely a different day the next day. So.
All right, favorite wrestling movie?
You know what? I don't really have a favorite wrestling movie, but if you want to go on those like similar lines, I'm a big Rocky guy.
Okay.
I like Rocky.
Which one?
I don't know. It's hard. They're all good, but it's hard to beat Rocky versus Ivan Drago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rocky IV.
USA
That's my
versus
favorite.
USA versus Russia. It's hard to beat that one when he's chopping logs. You know what I mean? That's a tough one to beat.
That's awesome. Fishing or golf?
My wife likes to golf, so I golf, but I don't. I enjoy it to an extent, but I don't like losing, so I don't really like golf. But I like fishing. I mean, probably indifferent there. I'd do either.
Yeah, what is that? Wrestlers they either love fishing or golfing. It's just like two staples that got to be part of the sport. So
yeah.
All right, favorite wrestling match of all time.
So one that I mean, you know, the Ironside Cole, that's always a classic. That's a great one. There's ones that really stick out in my mind. Like I remember, you know, when Burroughs first won it, Snyder won the gold. Those are cool ones just because it's, you know, the Olympics is such a big deal, and it's really cool when those guys first win. And they both won at a young age, so it was an exciting time to watch that stuff. Otherwise, I've got some exciting matches. When most exciting matches are some of the matches that I've coached kids, where you see kind of some of those things that you've trained them to do and coached them to do, and then when they start doing it, that's pretty exciting too to watch.
Yeah. It's never so I haven't seen it be high scoring yet. But speaking of little kids, Jake Knight and Steel Dirks, I like watching those two kids battle it out.
Yeah, it's usually pretty nail biter. Not high scoring, but yeah, you're gonna get a good match.
Yeah. Who's the greatest U.S. Olympic wrestler of all time?
That's a loaded question, because I think you could talk about some guys like, obviously Dan Gable never gave up a point in the Olympics, which is a feat of itself. But I think if you're talking the best, it's probably John Smith right now. But I think you're watching probably there's a couple of guys that are going to be on the team that really have a chance to solidify themselves as the best. And I'm talking, you know, Burroughs is in the talk. Snyder's still really young. But then you got guys like David Taylor and Jaden Cox and Dake that, I mean, they've been around for a while when you look at it, but I mean, I think they still got a lot of wrestling left in them potentially. So I think that's, you know, as of now, you probably have to go with John Smith just because of the accolades, but I think there's some guys there that, you know, might be a different answer once their careers are over. So
sure. Hey, one question real quick, Jay, sorry to take your turn here. What are your thoughts on Kyle Snyder? So we've got so many amazing wrestlers at this. So it'll be Kyle Snyder and Jaden Cox are going to be at the same weight. Who's going to win that one? That's an incredibly. I mean, you're looking at definitely like top 3 in the world, if not, you know, better than that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this. You know, I'm bummed that the trials are postponed, because I think this is the first year. I don't know if this has ever happened, because you're not, and then you got Dake and Burroughs too, where I don't know if we've ever had 2 world champions in the. I mean, they were last year, all 4 of them last year world champions. They're all competing for a spot. I don't think that's ever happened before. I don't know. I mean, I think if you made me bet the house on everything, I'd say Snyder, but I don't know. I think there's such a conflict of style. I think if Cox can get big enough, which I think from the sounds of it, he gets pretty big, but man, I've heard stories of him losing like 9 pounds in an hour before weigh-ins, and it's just crazy. But I think if he can handle the size adjustment, I think it's just the conflict of style is really interesting. I mean, that's intriguing to me just to watch that. So, yeah, I think if you ask me, I'd say Snyder, but I don't know. I could be swayed. Talk me out of it.
I like the U.S.'s chances at gold there, regardless of who it is. But
yeah, agreed. I think too. With Cox's style, I kind of like to see him wrestle Sajalev, just because I think that style could be interesting. There could be some really good scrambles and really good positions they get in. But I don't know. I don't know who I'd pick on that one.
How about your favorite wrestling style? So folk, Greco, freestyle,
Sumo.
sumo.
What's that? Sumo? Yeah. That's sometimes a style depending on what weight you're wrestling, but I like freestyle. I think I mean I'm not against folk style, but I like freestyle. I think it's exciting. I think there's a lot of technique in there too when you're talking some of the positions they get in. It's impressive.
Yeah. Do you think we can ever get a step out point in folk style?
I like that rule honestly because I think even though they said they changed the stalling rule to make it less of a judgment call, but it still is because it's determined by the ref if they see there's action. If they're it's just there's still inconsistencies with it. I think go away with the stalling push out and just if you step a step out rule. I think that's a good call. I think you just like freestyle. I like it. Plus, if they want to get if they want to do get more points on the board and higher scoring matches, what better instead of getting a warning, you get a point every time. So it's going to raise the matches.
For sure. Hey, what's your favorite vacation destination?
Favorite vacation destination? Probably somewhere warm, usually Florida or Mexico.
Hit the beach.
Yeah, not picky on them. Somewhere warm.
All right. Big question here.
Yeah.
Favorite quote?
Favorite quote? I don't know. I mean, I like the cheesy ones kind of, but then I don't because sometimes I like to make them my own a little bit.
Let's get a quote from Nick too.
Oh God, now you're putting me on that. Usually I think of them on the go. That's I'm in the scenario and I think there's no something that's a good one.
Hey Nick, I'm sorry, we're cutting out. We actually just missed what you just said. That last quote. I'm sorry.
Oh man, it was really good too. No, I said one I like is like there's no substitute for hard work. I think that's just a good one, plain simple, cuts to the chase, and I like to tell my kids too. Just because you work hard doesn't mean you're going to win, but it puts you in a position to win. People think you work hard and things are going to work out. That's not how life works. You work hard so you can feel good about the result regardless if you got it or not. That's why I think you work hard because then you can sleep. You're still going to have those things that keep you up at night, but at least it helps you sleep a little better. So I tell my kids that a lot. You work hard, you put yourself in a position to do the best, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. I think that's a good one.
Yeah, that's a
I don't know. I think I just kind of mash them together and say some stuff and makes sense, doesn't make sense. I don't know. It makes sense when it comes out. Whether it's interpreted would make sense is a different story.
I really like that. That hard work's going to give you the opportunities, and them opportunities hopefully will work in your favor.
Yep. Yes, there's one like that too, where I always tell my kids too that, you can't keep doing the same thing and expect a new result. The actual saying is, how does it go? It's something about the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. The kid might, and this it probably pertains more to high school kids because they always, the big thing is right after season, they've got all these goals. Well, what are you going to do different to achieve the goal? Because you didn't achieve it last year. So what are you going to do different? What are you going to do new that's going to put you in a position to achieve it next year? And you can and then within a week or two, you kind of have your answer there, what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, you can add 2 to 2 together as many times as you want. You're not going to get 5. You got to add something. You got to add one more thing. Got to add something to get to that fifth number.
Yep. Good. Hey, I want to throw one more question at you. Just knowing your background and knowing you've coached a lot of different kids, and you've been a competitor yourself. What is a college coach looking for in a high school wrestler who maybe in getting into the recruiting process? What's the first thing a college coach is looking at?
So I think that's evolving over time. I think they're looking a lot more at social media. I think they're trying to do a character judgment there. Before it's here said coaches, what do they say? I think that's why it's probably important for kids to watch what they're putting out there, because not only is it not only for college, but you're talking employers are looking at that too. So it's a big deal. But I think Jay and I were talking when you dropped off, but I think a lot of it too is they want a kid that they see they can develop, and whatever that may be. Some coaches are looking at how are they competing. I know a lot of coaches say they look at how they walk off the mat. When they want to see when they lose, they want to see when they win. And it's not so much about winning and losing. It's about how they're competing and how they're carrying themselves and what they're doing. And obviously I think stylistically probably plays a little bit of a factor, but I think with college coaching, you're getting there's a bigger coaching staff. You probably have a little bit more variety. And then with the RTCs too, those guys are basically coaches in the room too. So I think you can kind of cover some more styles, but so I don't think it's like, hey, if you want to go to Key State, you got to have a low single. I don't really think that's the case anymore. Or if you have a low single, you can't go to Iowa. I think that's kind of getting thrown to the wayside a little bit. And it's more about, hey, do we think we can make you into the best you can be? And if they do, I think that's what they're going for.
Sure.
And obviously they've got some good eyes for that stuff, and you can tell when. But sorry, I'm kind of jumping around here. But I also think too, they're not looking at guys that are just winning either, because there's a lot of guys that are winning in college that weren't winning in high school or weren't the best in high school, maybe middle. And when I say middle of the pack, I'm talking upper echelon, but maybe not those 1 and 2 ranked guys in the country, maybe the 15, 16 guys. But everyone's got a different ceiling and everyone reaches it at a different point. And some kids reach it early, some kids don't. And it's just like anything. You see kids that were really good and little kids, you don't see them in high school. And then kids that are really good in high school, sometimes you don't see them in college. And it's just a progression. And it's one of those cliche sayings we talked about earlier. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You got to, depending on your goal, you got to keep progressing for the long haul and just keep getting better and keep getting better and keep getting better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think going back just to quick synopsis of what the long answer was, I think they're looking at character. I think they're looking at the way they compete, the way they carry themselves, and then attitude too.
Sure. Good.
So
Good.
I think those are probably the main things is in my recommendation of what they're looking for.
Perfect. I appreciate it. Hey, any of you younger wrestlers out there listening, good words of wisdom here. Make sure, coaches are watching. They always are. So.
Agreed.
Awesome. Well, Nick, I really, really appreciate your time, man. It's been really fun. I want to say, and I did throw on one.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
So you guys are doing awesome things, and I look forward to continue to follow you guys' progress down there. Great job.
We're excited we're excited for the future, and we love you guys are a part of it, and we want to keep moving forward and keep building on it. So thanks for having us. And we, I kind of want to go back to and thank you guys too, because what you guys are doing, I think, Brody and I started, we did a college combine, and kind of the same principle of you guys did is I think there's a really good area around the QC Metro, which we were kind of laughing about what is the QC Metro earlier, but and I think sometimes it's a little overlooked. I think there's a lot of really good kids that are coming out of here. And I think the problem is if you don't go to Fargo, Super 32, and there's a select few tournaments that get a lot of notoriety. And if you're not having a ton of success at those, sometimes you get overlooked, but that doesn't mean that you should be overlooked. I think we've got a really good product in the Quad Cities that we're putting out really good wrestlers and at all levels, Division I, Division II, III, NAIA, JUCO, and all that stuff. And, we've had a couple JUCO national finalist champs. We got kids doing well at D2s, at Division I. And, I just think it's a really good area. And I think, we get overlooked a little bit by some of those. We're kind of smushed in between. Des Moines gets a lot, Chicago gets a lot, and sometimes we get left out, which I think is a mistake. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing for the area and for the kids. And going back to college recruiting, hopefully this picks up and, college coaches start following this, and you guys can help some of these kids get noticed and get on the radar. So appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nick. All right. Thank you for tuning in. Please share this podcast with your friends. Give us a like and a follow on Facebook and Twitter at QCA Wrestle. And keep an eye out for more QCA wrestling content coming soon.